Of the Township of Springwater of July 5th, 2023 come to order at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. We will now rise for the national anthem. Oh, Canada, our movement made to hatred of we see rise the true strong free from the fire in one Canada. We stand on God for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on God. Oh, Canada, we stand on God for thee. Thank you. Council, do we have any items for disclosure of pecuniary interest this evening? And Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I currently sit as the second vice president with the Floss Agricultural Society. I will be declaring an indirect conflict of pecuniary interest on item 4.2, Floss Agricultural Society, regarding a request for donation for student busing costs for the Elmville Fall Fair Parade. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garwood. I will now call upon Michael Kelly to present a delegation regarding the Hillsdale Athletic Association's request for donation for a batting tunnel at the Hillsdale Diamond. Welcome, Mike.
All right, thank you. So first of all, thank you for taking the time to listen to me today. My name is Mike Kelly. I'm with the Hillsdale Athletic Association, and we operate the minor ball program in Hillsdale. And just a little bit of background about what we are, where we've come from. We started the association back in 2016 with just one team, and currently in 2023 we have a full complement of teams from as young as U5 all the way up to U20. So we have approximately 100 participants in our association, and we are one of the more vibrant ones within the league that we play. We consider ourselves, I'm very passionate about the game of softball. I play it myself. I have for all my life, and we consider ourselves a leader in the provision of value to our participants. We run our program exceptionally professionally, as professionally as you can for under $200. We have personalized jerseys. We stream games on YouTube. We provide parents with personalized clips of their kid playing ball. All of these things that no other organization, as far as I know, in Ontario does these types of things for at the recreational level. Very few do it, period. But especially at the house league or recreational level. So we're exceptionally proud of that. And we're just continuously trying to innovate and provide additional value to our users. And part of the reason why I'm here today is to again add another piece of the puzzle to our program. We longer term, we just started a competitive kind of side of our program. Just started last year. In 2022, had one competitive team that played in what we would call our qualifiers for nationals. They did not qualify for the nationals, unfortunately. But longer term, that's our goal, is to start sending teams from Hillsdale to our national qualifiers. Last year, we did qualify for the Ontario Summer Games, which was a great accomplishment for our first time out for our players at the U17 level. So that's kind of what we're looking at doing. This particular project, sorry, next slide. And then I guess the next slide after that. Is to install a batting tunnel or batting cage similar to the one you see on the screen in that blurry picture there. Essentially, it's It's a bunch of mesh, enclosed area there where you can do batting practice and pitching practice and things like that. So that's kind of just what it would look like. Next slide. In terms of why we're looking to do this, from our perspective, it enhances the experience for our athletes. Playing in facilities that are top notch is something that kids, and we do kids. That's all we focus on is kids up to kind of maybe young adults. They love playing in good facilities, and this would provide that as well. It's a safety measure as well, so that you can practice while games are going on in the facility itself, and not have to worry about having spotters for your pitchers, or even just if kids are on the side of the field, that's you can keep them away from foul balls and things like that. The other consideration for us is that we have very limited access to our diamond in Hillsdale. And so something like this would provide us additional opportunities to play where we live, which is our objective here. Softball, at least boys softball or co-ed softball, is a very niche sport, doesn't have a ton of participation throughout the province. So we need to remove as many barriers to entry as possible. So having the ability to play where you live, to bike to the park and practice and play is important. So yeah, just currently we play most of our games. I said 87% of our games here are not on non-Springwater diamonds. We'll play 4 home games on Wednesday nights this year. The rest will be in Waverly. We play a little bit in Elmville on the school diamonds as well. So that's another reason why we're looking to do that. And for us, it improves or gives us the ability to do one-on-one and small group training. So if we have an instructor that's available, hire an instructor out, we can have them do some very focused training with a small group of individuals. And then, from your perspective, there's the possibility of increased revenue. If we had a third-party trainer that may want a facility that's not working for Smith Brothers or the Cage or something of that, this would provide them a facility, probably at a reasonable cost, that they could train other individuals throughout the township. And then next slide. So that's my rationales. And then in terms of the financials, at the end of the day, I've gotten a number of quotes out there, and essentially it's costing us about $20,000. And so I'm looking for a 50-50 partnership on that. So 10 and 10. And if we could install it this year, that would be amazing. But I understand that that may or may not be possible, but that's we'll leave that into your hands. So that's all I had. You guys have any questions or?
Thank you for the presentation. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the Hillsdale Athletic Association presentation? I have Councillor Alexander and Moore. Councillor, are there any questions at this time? Councillor Thompson and Moore.
Through the chair to Mr. Kelly, thank you for coming. A great presentation, and thank you for the work you do with our youth. And just a question about, I'm interested about the revenue generating. Would that revenue be coming to the township, or would it be going to your association?
Well, my guess is that we would have to come to some sort of agreement on usage between ourselves and on the township. But as long as we had what we considered fair usage of the facility, like the facility would be yours to do what you will with it.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Coughlin. Just a couple of questions. The life expectancy of your batting cages, sort of roughly how long do they stay there for in good shape? And then secondly, I noticed there was an electrical quote. So will this batting cage be lit? And I'm not familiar with your location. So how close are you to houses?
Okay, so sorry, what was the first question? Apologize.
Life expectancy.
Okay, so the skeleton, the post, I, to be honest with you, I don't know, but it would not be short. It's 4 posts that are, extremely high, quality. The cage itself or the mesh would have a life cycle, which is about $3,000. Currently, that was the quote I got. But depending on its usage, it would be at least 15 years, I would say you would get out of a mesh with moderate usage.
And the second question?
Oh, sorry,
Thank you.
electricity.
The lighting.
Yes, so no, the initial thing is not for lighting. It's because we need electricity out there for the pitching machine. So they'll just be running a line out there so that we can plug it in.
Thank you. And I have Counselor Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Thank you very much, Mike. I think it's a great initiative. I think you've raised an incredible amount of money. It's a lot of money to come to the table with, so I think it's very worthwhile. I do have a proposed amendment. Should I let other people speak first?
If that's all right, I did
Yes.
see Counselor Garwood. And that might be it. Correct. Counselor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself to Mr. Kelly. First of all, Mr. Kelly, thank you for coming on out. I appreciate it. And again, echo my colleagues' comments. So beyond the residents who would utilize this batting cage, how many kids would you say would benefit from utilizing this batting cage and an investment from the municipality?
So I can only speak for myself, and it would be our association, which currently is 100 kids or so. Yeah, that's exactly.
Now I'll go back to Counselor Alexander.
Okay, thank you. And I'm gonna speak for Mike here, and please, if I'm not speaking correctly, tell me. I think part of the idea, I think, is that part of my amendment would be to have it be able to rent it out to other kids within the municipality that play ball. So it wouldn't just necessarily be for 100, it would be a potential for more. You're nodding
Agreed.
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as,
Sorry.
yeah, like I said, in terms of the revenue generating portion, as long as we get what I would consider fair usage of it, then it would be available beyond that, so.
Okay, so the amendment I would like to add was, and that council hereby directs staff to report on the full costs, including ongoing maintenance and insurance for the installation of a batting tunnel at the Hillsdale Ball Diamond. And further, that this report be provided ahead of the 2024 budget considerations for possible inclusion in the 2024 budget. And that the report includes options for rental rates of the facility.
I'm just looking for a seconder on that. I have Garwood for a seconder, and we're going to vote on the amendment that was just read. All right, council, all those in favor? The amendment has carried. And now we will move back to our main motion that the delegation from the Hillsdale Athletic Association regarding the request for a donation for the batting tunnel at the Hillsdale Diamond be received and as amended. And I had a mover and second already. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Are you streaming tonight's game?
No.
Come on. The one time.
Maybe if,
No, my daughter's playing against his son tonight, so.
maybe if Tanya had the great cell service like we have out here.
Sorry about that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. I will now call upon Linda Murray to present a delegation regarding the Floss Agricultural Society request for donation for student busing costs and the Elmvale Fall Fair Parade. Welcome, Miss Murray. I like your t-shirt. I have 3 of those at home.
Thanks very much for having me. As many of you know, we have a fall fair in Elmville on Thanksgiving weekend, and I am Linda Murray, and I'm the youth program committee chair, which one of the things that I look after is the parade. And we have approximately 1,800 students that come to the parade. And if you want to just start going through the slide presentation, just kind of run the slides. And so the pictures are each of the schools and the houses of EDHS that go in the parade. So it takes approximately an hour for all of these 1,800 kids to go through the parade. And it is one of the largest school parades in the province of Ontario. We are blessed to have a lot of schools participating. We are the envy of a lot of fairs in the province of Ontario, and I brag about it every time I get to go to provincial meetings. So it's great to do. It is the beginning of our fair to have the parade, the children's parade. And with that, it brings in lots of revenue to the township because all the parents have to come and pick their kids up. And so one of the things that happens is all of the youth from the outlying schools get bused into the fair. The parents pick them up, but they get bused in to do it. So they all come at once. There isn't one bus that goes back and forth with the kids. So there's usually anywhere between 5 to 8 school buses that come from each of the outlying schools. So there's the 3 schools, and we are working on a 4th school to join us again for the busing component. We're looking to try to get Forest Hill to participate in the fair. So it's the cost is getting high, as in fuel. The busing costs are getting that I'm really, really saddened that it may be the detrimental piece that has the outlying schools not participating in the fair. It is not part of their budgets. It can't be part of their budgets. It's usually kind of it's in the process. It is a field trip, and it just kind of that's the way it does. And usually most field trips are parent, they ask parents to help subsidize that. And for the fair, I don't think that is a feasible piece for the families to do. And it just, we need the students at the fair. And the biggest thing to have the students come to the fair is the diversity in our schools now is phenomenal. It's there are children that are coming to our fair that have never seen a farm animal, never been on a farm, and agriculture is a big part of our township. And we need to continue to train and to introduce agriculture to these youth. And it's amazing that they learn about cows and the pigs and the horses that we have and everything like that. And we need the children here. And so we, the fair, are asking to partnership with the township to help offset. We will not be paying for the whole busing. It would be lovely if we could, but we're trying to offset some of the costs. We did put an estimate of about $5,000. And that would be divided amongst the schools. Hopefully if the 4th school comes, it would be divided evenly. It would not pay for all of their busing, but it would at least help them to participate in the fair, as it just kind of, it's something that we need and that is important to all of us. I think that the agriculture education, and just for them to participate. So it's been going on for 100 years, and it would be the sad piece that the kids can't come. And a side note from the presentation, I was at the EDHS commencement, or I called it commencement. It's their graduation last week, and 90% of the youth said that their favorite memory was coming to the fair. So it's an important part of our background, our history, and I think it's an important piece of our future that we have the youth involved as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. At this time, I need a mover and seconder to receive the Floss Agricultural Society presentation. I have Deputy Cabral and Councillor Alexander. And now, Councillor, are there any questions or comments? Councillor Fisher?
Is it confirmed that the school board will not pay over and above?
It's not the school board. When the budgets come within the schools, they have to pick and choose what pieces what they want to do. And I don't think the fair has ever been part of that budget piece. It's just been an extra that they've kind of spent on it.
And follow on, Councillor Fisher?
So I guess my question is it absolutely confirmed that they will not partake? just
I
before
have
we?
not confirmed, but I know that within conversation last year, we did have a school that reached out because they didn't know how they were going to pay for it. And I think they kind of wiggled around and they let something else go so that the kids could come to the fair. Yeah.
I have Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you, welcome, Linda.
Thanks.
Nice to see you out. I know one of my questions is going to be in respect to the crafts and whatnot that the students themselves used to enter. My thoughts would be that that still is a part, a huge part. So in my way, it's something that obviously the kids in Elmville, they just show up there because they can walk over. And so we're talking about would-be Forest Hill, Minising,
Hillsdale.
and Hillsdale. Okay, because Wyvale is not in
It's
this.
not.
Yeah,
Ship.
that's why I was kind of trying to wrap my head around.
Miss Murray, I'm just
We
gonna
have to
ask-
remember
sorry.
that they come to.
Miss Murray, I'm just gonna
EHS.
ask that when we are,
Oh, sorry.
we're gonna go through the chair, so
Okay,
it's just
sorry.
when, it's no problem.
Okay.
It's just, my apologies.
Let's call.
So,
Thank you.
sorry, and I guess from my point too, is it's still a bit of an unknown. So I would like to kind of be able to think to myself, if township were to partner, this would not be a one-off. This would be something that would be an ongoing in all likelihood.
Yes.
Right, so that's something that would have to play into it. So just something that I need to kind of mull about myself, because it's more of a commitment than just for 1 year is what I'm getting at.
Miss Murray?
It is, first of all the things, we have about 2,600 entries of the work that the children bring in. And it is Wyville is part of it, but we put them in with this is because a lot of those students do come to EDHS when they get older. So it just kind of, the one-off is I think we're being proactive at asking and helping, and then seeing what we can do, if we can work as a partnership, be a test run this year. And if it doesn't work out, is to find out some other ideas that we might be able to do together. Because I know that the municipality and the fair have worked very well together over the last, I mean, I've been involved in about 55 years. So I'd just like to see what we would like to do.
I have a follow-on from Deputy Cabral, and then I do have Fisher and Thompson.
Yeah, I guess my fear would be that if it's partnership is preferable to me anyway, would be that the school board might all of a sudden decide someone else is becoming too involved. I wonder if there's any kind of a process that we could engage with to kind of get a look and get a sense of how the partnership would work.
Uh-huh.
Because I would be favorable to doing it. I'd hate to see the kids not be able to go to the fall fair, because I know that they do participate, but doesn't seem to be like real framework at this stage of the game. So I'm just curious about that.
There isn't the framework because we have not spoken with the school principals at this point. Is we wanted to kind of put some feelers out, because either that or we were going to do some kind of like a fundraiser. Just, we're not paying for their busing. We are supplementing their busing to help them to make sure it just so that they're not using all of their budget and taking away from some other learning opportunity.
Counselor Fisher?
Yeah, first off, I just wanted to say, I completely agree with agricultural education for kids. I think that even in a rural area, a lot of kids don't have that education, and they don't realize where their food comes from, even that it's a large source of the economy in our area. So I completely agree with you. I think the fall fair is as much a fun outing as it is an educational opportunity. You know, I still take my kids to the Royal Winter Fair, you know, and but I do concur with Deputy Mayor Cabral. I would sort of like to see where the schools sit right now before we commit to anything, because as it says here, it is an estimate, right?
Yeah.
I actually, the more I hear you talk about it, the more I like it. However, I would like to see exactly where we sit and have that framework in place, you know, before we embark on anything.
Okay.
Counselor Thompson?
So I'm new to council and just a question to the chair. So this is something new. This hasn't been done in the past?
Thank you. And Councillor Thompson, this came about, I was picking my kids up from one of the events that Linda put on, and she was talking about how they were going to maybe embark on a fundraiser that the junior fair board was going to do to ensure that they could keep all the kids coming. And at that time I said, like, the fall fair is the one time when everybody, all the students in Springwater are together. Like it happens at track and field and it happens at what, but this is like seeing that baseball diamond and you get to actually look at it, and it's pretty incredible. We have the golf tournament funding, and on it actually, when we raise money for it, it says community initiatives. This to me, the fall fair in Elmville is one of our strongest community initiatives. I think that it goes to all of our children. And if we, I think we did for the Maple Syrup Festival, we bought like a taffy, like we sponsor. So this isn't the first time we have sponsored financially one of our festivals. This is the first time this request has come forward for busing.
Just to follow on. So we just had a fundraiser. We just had the swing, Springwater swing. So rather than go to taxpayers, could we not go to the swing fund?
Yes. All right. Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I certainly want to stay engaged with it. And I would have to say that I would agree with Councillor Thompson. This does certainly fit into the parameters, as Mayor Coughlin has also indicated, as far as the Springwater swing is concerned. So I'd certainly be open to being engaged. I just would like, I guess, more of a detail or more of a number. And I know that might present some difficulty because we don't meet again until August. I don't know when you start reaching out to find out how logistically this is all going to work.
I'm going to go back to Miss Murray and then Councillor
That
Fisher.
that would be the answer, is probably because right now that's why I wanted that we put this together really quickly to come for today's meeting is they're on holidays,
Yeah.
right? And the staff are not going to be back at the schools until probably the end of August. So probably maybe do another delegation. I don't know, is that the process to do another delegation in the beginning of September?
I'm going to go to Councillor Fisher, and then I'm going to turn to Clerk Ainsworth, and maybe we can wordsmith something that wouldn't require an additional delegation, maybe just communication. So I'm going to go to Councillor Fisher.
I just, I don't want it to be precedent setting that it's an every year thing.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to throw this out there. I do see the importance in it, actually. So I do like it. I think that time is of the essence with it, just based upon when we meet again. I would think, if we were to take it from the swing account now this year, it's a one-off, right? We're not committing to anything. And then in the coming year, we put together framework, work with the principals. I also want to say, being from Ward 5, having the Forest Hill kids involved, I think, yeah, so I'd really like to see that. I can honestly tell you, typically I don't like the taxpayer subsidizing things, as you all know. I harp on about it all the time, but I do see importance in it. And I mean, if it is a one-time thing where we do use it, and that's what these funds are made for, and but then commit to putting a framework in place where in the future, it's not necessarily precedence.
Council, if I can, if we were to put forward a motion at this time that say that for the 2023, like now, that it's being funded from the golf tournament, and that staff be requested to work with the fair board and the school board to establish a partnership moving forward. That way we can get the funding to you now, and we can have that all in one resolution. So if there was someone on the Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'd be happy to make that motion. I think that'll provide opportunity for us to find out what our share would be, but certainly to say that it would be funded from the Springwater swing, I'd be more than happy to put that motion forward.
And seconded by Councillor Fisher. And I'll just wait for Clerk Ainsworth to have some wording here for us. And CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just while Clerk Ainsworth is papering that, just if we can make sure that there is a exact dollar amount for 2023 that we're speaking of.
I have, so what's written here for us is, and that council hereby approve the donation of $5,000 to the Elmvale Fall Fair for busing costs associated with transportation of students to the school parade for 2023 to be funded from this proceeds of the Springwater Swing, and that further staff would work with the Elmvale Fall Fair Board to draft a framework of possible funding for future years. Sorry. Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I don't have a problem with the number, but I think it was 5,000 in total. So what I would ask is that be the donation funding, but based on the partnership, whatever residuals are left over from that $5,000, that the Fair Board earmark those funds into 2024. Because hopefully we're still going to be able to get it for less than $5,000 and you'll have some funds carried forward. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Clerk Ainsworth is just making that. Perfect. And that has been amended with the additional funds to be carried forward for 2024. Council, do you want me to read it again, or we're all good on that? Do you want me to read it? Yeah, absolutely. So it's so that we receive the delegation, and that council hereby approve the donation of $5,000 to the Elmvale Fall Fair for busing costs associated with transportation of students to the school parade for 2023 to be funded from the proceeds of the Springwater Swing, with additional funds left over to be carried forward to 2024. Further, that staff work with the Elmvale Fall Fair Board to draft a framework for possible funding for future years. Deputy Cabral?
Thank you. I think the term should be remaining funds as opposed to additional funds. That's the only change I would make to that motion.
Being made right now. Done. Council, is there any other questions or comments? And seeing none, all those in favor? And that amendment has carried. And I will go back to the main motion. That the delegation from the Floss Agricultural Society regarding the request for the donation of student busing costs for the Elmvale Fall Fair be received as amended. All those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, everybody. It's appreciated and hope to see you at the fair. And then we can really brag about how well. Thank you.
And, an election year.
Oh,
That's fine.
That's why. Okay, thank you.
We now have question period, and I'm now going to turn to Clerk Ainsworth to see if there's been any submissions received.
Thank you. There have been no submissions received for this evening's meeting.
And are any members of the audience wishing to submit a question to council this evening? And seeing none, I will now move on to the minutes. May I have a mover and seconder to approve the minutes of council? I have Deputy Cabral and Councillor Garwood, that the minutes of council listed herein be approved as presented. Minutes in the regular meeting of council of June 21st, 2023. Minutes of the special meeting of council, June 21st, 2023. Are there any questions on these minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that has carried. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the minutes of boards and committees and other organizations? Deputy Cabral and Alexander. That the minutes of boards, committee, and other organizations listed herein be received for information. The draft minutes of the NVCA board meeting of June 23rd, 2023. Any questions on the minutes? And seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. May I have a mover and seconder for the options report regarding shipping containers? Councilors Thompson and Alexander. That the report from the planners regarding the shipping containers options dated July 5th, 2023 be received. And option 1, that staff be directed to conduct public consultation by way of survey and report back to council prior to proceeding on any applicable planning process. Option 2, that staff be directed to undertake a township initiated zoning bylaw amendment to modify shipping container policies. And 3, that staff be directed to maintain status quo with respect to the shipping container prohibition on all zones, notwithstanding the general industrial outside storage zone. At this time, we will turn to council for comment and questions. Councillor Thompson.
Just some comments. I didn't notice shipping containers in our township until I got elected, and now I see them everywhere. So I certainly wouldn't propose option number 3. We currently have in my estimation, several hundred shipping containers in our township, and I would like for us to take our time and find a correct policy, a correct solution for our township. I think there should be two different solutions, one for people living outside the settlement areas and one for people in the settlement areas. And so I would propose, I would be leaning towards option number 2.
Sorry, Counselor Fisher?
I actually do favor number 2, but I think you're right, Councillor Thompson. I think that there is a bit of a different set of rules. I know where I live, if a shipping container was in the neighbor's yard, it would be really unsightly. That being said, if I had 100 acres and it was beside my machine shed, it would be a little bit different. So I do think that the zoning bylaw should maybe reflect that.
Thank you. I'm actually going to turn to Director Spagnol. As part of the, would there be public input as part of the planning process? So basically my question is, if we go with option 1, is that then we're going to be going to the public twice? If we have the amendment, would we not be going to the public as part of the regular planning process?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. To answer your question, yeah, council would be going to the public twice. The reason why staff put the option of the survey there was to provide some additional feedback to inform any draft policies or provisions that would come forward as part of the zoning bylaw amendment. However, that said, the zoning bylaw process does require a public meeting. It requires township-wide notification. So council would be provided with comments from any residents who are interested in that specific zoning amendment.
Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Not a question, a comment. I would be in favor of option 2. And that was kind of my concern going to the folks twice, because we would be basically doing the number 1 as part of option number 2. But I'd just like to comment on, I think when shipping containers originally were being used in the industrial zones, a lot of folks didn't consider them until probably the last 10 or 15 years as viable options for storage. In particular, farmers use them for storing seed. They use them for storing materials, and they have the space to do that. I think it probably bodes well for us to look at, kind of like the fire permits, open burn permits. We still allow some folks to have campfires in the settlement areas, but not an open burn permit per se, because just the magnitude and size of the fire. So would there be option, maybe based on size or whatever? I think option 2 will provide those processes and help us make a proper decision on where these can be utilized and where it would be inappropriate.
And if we could have, I have a mover and seconder already, correct? So we need to, who was the mover? My apologies. I'm hearing option 2, it doesn't matter. So it was Thompson and Alexander. So if the mover and seconder are fine with option 2, and at that time, council, is there any further discussion on option 2 before us? And seeing none, all those in favor? And that has carried. Our outdoor digital sign policy, may I have a mover and seconder for the outdoor digital sign policy? I have Councillor Moore and Garwood that the report from the communications officer regarding the outdoor digital sign policy be received, and that option 1, the outdoor digital sign policy attaches appendix C, be approved, or option 2, that the outdoor digital sign policy as attached as appendix D, reflecting the request of the Elmvale Lions Club, be approved as presented. And I had to mover and seconder. Council, if there's any comments or questions on this, Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just a few things. First, a comment, and then I want to read something. I'm in favor of option 2. I think it makes sense for us to align ourselves with the initial funding partner, the Lions, who have shared their support of option 2, which is appendix D. I have received communication from Lion Scott McLean in regards to the Lions vision for the policy. So I am going to not read the entire communication. Mr. McLean has provided permission for me to read this information. I have reviewed the agenda, item 7.2, outdoor digital signage policy. Appendix D is coming a lot closer to the wishes of the Elmville Lions Club. However, as stated in correspondence dated May 27th, 2023, the list of events as suggested is only a partial list. We would like to see the sign be used to promote community events and be the voice of the community. So that's the end of his comment. I do have a amendment, but I won't put it forward quite yet. I'll let other folks speak and then I will put my hand back up.
Any other additional comments or questions? Deputy Cabral, and if I can just ask for clarification too, the amendment, is it redirecting option 1 or 2, or is it just? Okay, never mind. I'll go to Deputy Cabral.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to CAO Schmidt. I know the letter here from the District Lions Club is dated last year, or actually prior to that, 2021, I believe is the date that's on the letter. I just want to know whether there's been further consultation in the development of this policy, specifically with the Lions Club. And the only reason I ask that is much along the same lines as Councillor Garwood with their input and basically funding of the digital sign and coming forward at that time. We did work to develop a bit of a partnership, and I want to ensure that at least in the Elmville area, because of their service to the community, that they do have some opportunity to not necessarily control, but have a broader access to the sign for a broader scope of activities, rather than the general policy is going to be for completely owned township signs. That would be my concern. So I would concur with Councillor Garwood in that respect.
CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Deputy Cabral. So Deputy Mayor Cabral, the Appendix A is the original letter that we, I guess, had agreed with the Lions Club back when we were walking through the process of trying to get approval, if you will, for the original sign. And then subsequent to that, so the report came forward to council. And subsequently, it's just recently come back to council. And at that time, council directed staff to meet with members of the Lions Club. And so Appendix B of tonight's agenda does have a letter directed to myself from May 27th of this year, whereby we did meet. So myself, communications officer Adet, as well as manager Dean, met with members of the Lions Club to go over their concerns and to try to address what it is that they were hoping to have provided for in the sign. So the letter does speak to some of the things that they're requesting. As noted in the letter, it does state or some of the events, if you will, or initiatives that they would like to be included in the policy. And those items have been specifically included in Appendix D of tonight, and they're highlighted in Appendix D. That said, to Councillor Garwood's comments, Mr. McLean did indicate too in the letter to addressed to me on May that wasn't an inclusive list. There were other events that would likely we would need to consider as well. And so I think from a staff perspective, we understand that. We know where the Lions Club's position is. It's definitely for community use. And we are willing to work with them as best we can to ensure that those messages are communicated appropriately. And maybe I'll leave it at that.
Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. If you don't mind, I am going to now read out my amendment. I've also emailed it to the clerk.
Please go ahead.
As a founding partner and a funding partner, the Elmville District Lions Club meeting dates and initiatives should be displayed on the Elmville digital sign. While this information is listed on page 5 of the report, Outdoor Digital Signage Policy, located under 7.2 on this evening's agenda, the mention of the Lions Club was not included within Appendix D. I would like to amend Appendix D and include the Elmville District Lions Club under item 2.5. In addition, I would like to request a committee of 2 staff members along with 2 members of council be created. This committee's role would be to review digital sign requests that do not fall within the policy and make the determination if the request is to be approved or denied. So these requests aren't required to come to the council table each time. Thank you.
Yeah, and a seconder for that. Counselor Alexander. And before we, I guess my first question would be, I see this much like our signed proclamation bylaws, because we have people that don't fall within, and then we have to make a decision as to whether or not the flag's actually going to go up. What process is involved in that? And that doesn't come to council all the time unless it's, if you could explain that, please, Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you. So the process for the flag policy would be staff would review it for conformity to the policy, provide a memo to the mayor stating that this request has been received. It's either conforms or does not conform to the policy. If it does not conform, then notice would be provided to all members of council stating that this request came in, it does not conform for these reasons and has been denied. And then a member of council would be able to request that it be added to the next agenda for council consideration of the request outside of the policy framework.
Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I see that would place us back in a position where we would have folks who wanted to advertise whatever. Anyway, coming back before council. And I think it's a situation where it's a process that I think to Councillor Garwood's point, and my understanding too, is we used to have, prior to my tenure anyway, a fleet committee that there was a counselor who sat on that. So I'm kind of thinking that a committee of a couple of members of council and a couple of members from staff, maybe 3 members from staff, to be quite honest with you, so that you don't have to worry about a tie. But I also think that particular committee would have final say, and there'd be no avenue of appeal, for lack of a better term, or we run into the same position where someone's going to come back here because they didn't like what they got. And I think for this, if it doesn't meet the criteria, then it could go to the committee. The committee can make a determination, and if it's yay or nay, it's the committee's decision, and no route for appeal on that decision.
Can I turn to Clerk Ainsworth and then Counselor Garwood?
Thank you. Just comments regarding the creation of a committee. It's usually not appropriate for staff to sit as voting members of a committee. Usually it's made up of members of council and members of the public, with staff sitting as a liaison or a resource for the committee. So I would recommend not having staff as voting members of the committee, just as a resource to guide the committee. There's nothing wrong with the committee being made up of 3 members of council. Once you hit 4th, it's a quorum of council, so you need to stick with 3 members of council. That's where I would recommend with staff sitting on as a resource instead. And in follow on to this, should this be approved by council, staff would come forward with a terms of reference at the next meeting for council's consideration that would deal specifically with this policy. So that would come into play then. The other item that council would need to be aware of is, because it is an official committee of council, there would need to be agendas, notices of meetings, open meetings, as well as minutes taken for all the committee structure.
Thank you. And before I do go to Counselor Garwood, so the explain for me in depth the point of the committee and why we need another committee.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I think the purpose of the committee is common sense. And I think I want to use a little bit of that here. I think if we continue to go back and forth with the Lions on this, we're going to be looking at lists forever and ever and ever. And Councillor Audette's going to, create Appendix F, because we're just going to keep on going. So my thought here, and in various discussions with folks, has been that if we create, whether it be again, and I don't know this, so this is maybe more of a question too, whether it be a formal committee or if it's again, informal committee. I'm not sure if that's a no. All right. Thank you for that, Clerk Ainsworth. But regardless, I think the idea would be that this doesn't have to come back to this table. Also, at the same time, with our meeting schedules, it's also going to be difficult for folks that require use of the sign to have access to the sign in a timely manner. So hopefully, again, while we hope folks will submit their requests, if they don't fall within that approved list, Again, we're absolutely going to miss somebody and we're going to approve a policy. And then tomorrow we're going to get a phone call that says, well, you missed my group. And we're going to go absolutely, and then have to make an amendment. So if we have a group that is dedicated to this action that can manage this and not take up time at this table, I see that as a benefit.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to CAO Schmidt, what is the plan for additional outdoor digital signs then throughout the township? Because I think I don't want to create a committee that is just for this one sign, because we're going to run into all sorts of issues.
CAO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Coggan. Through you to Councillor Moore. Councillor Moore, the direction that was provided to staff back in 2021 was essentially that digital signs for Hillsdale, Anton Mills, and Midhurst be referred back to staff to provide further information on timelines, approvals, process, and costs. So at this point in time, staff has not brought forward any other staff reports regarding additional digital signs. I believe during the discussion, those were the three other locations that former council had recommended. I think, subject to council's consideration, the one in Midhurst, discussions were, I believe, that the community hub would likely be an opportune or location that we might want to consider. Hillsdale, there was discussions about possibly by the community park. Ant Mills, I believe, is similar by the community hall is, I think, a location that had been considered, but none of those have been approved. It's still up for staff to bring back a report for council's consideration as for which community should be getting a digital sign next.
Follow on, Counselor Moore?
You. So thank you, CAO Schmidt. That was 2021. So what's the status now? How close are we?
CAO Schmidt?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Councillor Moore. That's something I'll have to have a further discussion with staff. I think this sign in Elmville took longer than what we had hoped, obviously, now that it is installed. And now we also have the administration center was a replacement of the existing sign, if you will. Hopes will be that, I'll discuss with staff and hopefully we can have something considered for the 2024 budget.
Counselor Garwood? Then Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Councillor Moore, and I completely agree with you. I think there should be not multiple committees for multiple different digital signs. So maybe we should clarify that a bit and say that, again, because this policy that we have in front of us tonight is the outdoor digital signage policy, doesn't mention Elmville in the title, then I think we keep this as a broad committee for future signs should and when staff come forward for future installations.
Counselor Fisher and then Alexander.
Well, Councillor Garwood sort of answered the question a moment ago, but I do worry about a bit of redundancy, having a committee, replacing council, and I do worry about the future with other digital signs coming on, having 3 members of council sort of control those signs. So I don't know. I do worry about having a committee, to be honest with you.
Counselor Alexander and then Deputy Cabral.
Thank you. So what I think, I do think we need one policy. We don't need 20. I do feel that potentially there's a caveat in the outdoor sign policy with respect to the Elmville sign, in that it was funded very heavily by the Elmville District Lions Club, and they should get a say in what goes on that. And that might not happen in the other signs. I think if we want to continue to partnerships like this, we have to respect our partners' money.
Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you. As far as committee of 3 members of council, I'd be quite frank. I think the process is going to be that these would only be ones that would come before the committee that did not fit the normal parameters for going up. And to be quite honest, if Councillor Fisher would prefer, personally myself, I would like to see Councillor Garwood on it, because it's a unique sign in Elmville, because that particular sign was funded by the Lions Club. And but this does provide opportunity for certain messages to be displayed on the sign that wouldn't fit normally under the parameters, and we just get a hard no. So that's the only reason why I do agree with Councillor Garwood. And I'd be happy if you would volunteer to sit on the committee. So, you know, you're not gonna have everybody on here wanting to sit on it anyway, and some of them are gonna definitely be a hard no, and hopefully we'll get a couple of members of staff to sit with the committee and provide some guidance, provide some objectivity to them too. That's the only comment I have to make.
All right. Counselor Garwood, and then I'll go back to the amendment, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And building off of what the deputy mayor said, in my amendment, I did say the committee's role would be to review digital sign requests that do not fall within the policy. So thank you, Deputy Mayor, for repeating that. And yeah, Phil or Councillor Fisher, let's come on the committee.
If I can keep an eye on you, Councillor Garwood, I'd be glad to. Thank you.
All right, so I do have the amendment that's on the floor. It was moved by Counselor Garwood, seconded by Counselor Alexander. Are there any? Or do you have a- Counselor
Sorry,
Thompson.
through the chair to CEO Schmidt, one last question. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was a grant for some of these digital signs. And if so, how much is left in that grant?
Director Radigan?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Councillor Thompson. I do believe there, and I may have to come back and provide this through an email, but it was through the original municipal modernization funds that were provided through the province in 2019. And funds were earmarked, I believe a total of $100,000 was earmarked for digital signs throughout the township of Springwater. And so a portion of those funds have already been used for the Elmville sign, a small portion for the sign at the admin center. So I don't have a current total, but I can definitely provide that through CIP or through an email to members of council.
Thank you, Director Radigan. Email is fine. So the amendment is before us. Again, moved by Counselor Garwood, seconded by Counselor Alexander. And I'm gonna have Clerk Ainsworth read it, please.
Thank you. The amendment would read as follows, that option 2 be selected and to add to the motion that Appendix D, Section 2.5 be amended to add the Elmvale and Districts Lions Club, and that Section 4.8 of the policy be deleted and replaced with that a committee be created of 3 members of council with a mandate to review digital sign requests that do not fall within the policy and make the determination if the request is to be approved or denied. And further, that a draft terms of reference be presented to the next regular meeting of council for consideration along with member selection for the committee.
Cabral and Moore and Fisher. No. Oh, you guys are just waving. Okay, great. Cabral.
Just as a friendly piece, I do think it's important to include in there that there would be no appeal of the decision of the committee, because all that does is it just puts us back to square one again. So just if there's a way to include that so that the policy reflects it.
Thank you. And it is with no appeal mechanism has been added. Perfect. All those in favor of the amendment? And the amendment has been carried, and we will be going back to the main motion. And before I do see Officer Adet has joined us on her time off. And didn't know if there was any, you can simply shake your head no if you have no more comment, but all right, there we are. Thank you for joining us anyway. So we do have option 2 as amended, and I don't recall who moved and seconded, but you've got it down there. Moore and Garwood. So all those in favor of option 2 is amended, and that has carried. I have now action reports. May I have a mover and seconder to get the action reports on the floor? It's Deputy Cabral and Councillor Thompson that action reports 8.2 through 8.8 be received and that the recommendations contained therein be approved as presented. I have 8.2, the Great Canadian Outdoor Trade Store request. I have 8.3 temporary draft, draft temporary outdoor patio program policy. 8.4 library unaudited year-end results as of December 31st, 8.5, excuse me. 8.5 SU 2021-003 Thompson Lands. Stage 1 subdivision agreement request for council authorization. 8.6 ZB 2023-010. 1010 Beaver Lane, and I have 8.7 B 8.02/23 Committee of Adjustment Decision Condition 4 for Midhurst Heights and 8.8 Midhurst Heights Stage 2 Agreement. I have 8.3 and 8.4 pulled at this point. Council, is there any others to be pulled? And is there any comment on the remaining 8.2 through 8.8? So that action.
Sorry, just
Yeah.
regarding 8.8. Just regarding the Midhurst Heights Stage 2 Agreement vote, just had a question for Mr. Spagnell. Just about the developer fulfilling all of their agreements. Is in your opinion, are they ready to go through with Stage 2?
Director Spagnell?
Thank you, Mayor Coggin, through you to Councillor Fisher. The report that's before council is before council because staff is comfortable with allowing the developer to move forward through their Stage 2 works, really which encompasses internal works to provide for the installation, construction of infrastructure. The engineering reports that have been completed to date are at a level where Ainley Group has signed off and has indicated they're satisfied with allowing for these internal works to move forward. So that is why this report is on the floor for council and is recommended for approval to allow the mayor and the clerk to endorse the agreement. So the answer is yes, we're comfortable with moving forward at this stage.
Following Councilor Fisher?
Also, Mr. Spagnell, could you just take counsel and the public who's watching what that entails? I think we all know internal and external, right? But could you just let them know exactly what the developer would be allowed to work on?
Director Spagnell?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through to Councillor Fisher. And I have GM Ramdale beside me as well, where he can provide any correction if need be. Really, the internal works would allow for the installation of infrastructure for stormwater management purposes. It would allow for the construction of roadways, it would allow for the installation of pipes and services and those types of things needed in order to provide for the internal servicing and the internal infrastructure for the subdivision. From an external standpoint, there's still some work that needs to be done from an engineering design point of view and whatnot that needs to catch up, but the developer is working diligently to go in and do those designs and get that work completed. I'll refer it over to GM Ramdale if I missed anything. Thank you.
GM Ramdale? Perfect. So I have 8.3 and 8.4 pulled and not seeing any additional comments. All those in favor? And that has carried. So we now have 8.3, which is. May I have a mover and seconder to provide the report regarding the draft temporary outdoor patio program? I have Councillor Garwood and Deputy Cabral that the report from the Deputy Clerk regarding the draft temporary outdoor patio program dated July 5th, 2023 be received, and that subject to comments received from council, the temporary outdoor patio program policy attached as Appendix A be approved, and that the fees and charges bylaw 2023-044 be amended to include a $100 application fee for temporary outdoor patio permit. And at this time, I have comment from Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. This has been ongoing for some time and we've been, well, some members of council have, and I think most members of council have supported it, tried to open the door to some of our restaurants and brick and mortar restaurants in Springwater Township, in particular, Elmvale area. And we've kind of struggled to get this moving along. So with respect to the policy itself, I'm proposing that the policy continue to be worked on, and I have sent an amendment, proposing an amendment to this here particular report, action report, that hopefully will facilitate our restaurants who want to participate and have some capacity for outdoor patio to engage in that in a more expeditious fashion, and still allow staff to continue to work on the policy into 2024 so that it can once again become more robust and address the concerns and needs of Elmvale in and of itself. So that's what I would like to do, and I've provided a notice of, I don't know what we're calling it, an amendment to, I apologize. An amendment to Clerk Ainsworth that I would like to put forward.
And a seconder for the amendment, Counselor Garwood. And Clerk Ainsworth, the amendment. Oh, it's long. Make George read it.
I have to put it on my screen.
Can I get your, no, I was joking. Can I get your mic off?
Oh, sorry.
Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you. And just to explain the effect of the amendment, the policy currently as drafted would be for patios on the on-street parking space. This amendment would make it so that the patios would be on the sidewalk piece, leaving AODA standards for the walkway and whatnot within the downtown core. So the amendment would read as follows, to remove paragraphs 2 and 3 from the original motion. And then to add that council hereby approve a program for temporary encroachment agreement for sidewalk patios as initiated in 2020. And that businesses requesting a temporary encroachment agreement be required to submit an application and adhere to the necessary Building Code Act, Zoning Bylaw, and Fire Protection and Prevention Act, Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario regulations, and address public works concerns, along with the necessary inspections to ensure compliance, and that the requirements for the sidewalk patios for the 23 season be as follows. Liability insurance for $2 million per occurrence when not for establishments not serving alcohol, and $5 million per occurrence for establishments serving alcohol. The applicant must allow the representatives of the township on or any public utility to enter the outdoor patio for purposes of installation, maintenance, repairs of pipes, cables, wires, poles, and other installations. Only food and beverage prepared and served from the abutting eating establishment are permitted. No outdoor food preparation services or service facilities, thank you, are permitted within the outdoor patio area. The facilities of the abutting restaurant must provide food preparation, garbage storage, and washroom satisfactory to the municipality and health unit. Nominal fee of $100 for the application, removal of the patio by October 15th for snow removal purposes. Outdoor patio design specifications must adhere to the barrier-free design guidelines for the AODA. Terms requiring termination of the agreement in the event that the third party is not adhering to the requirement of the agreement, and drawings of the footprint of the patio to be submitted with initial requests. And that council hereby authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into temporary encroachment agreements with restaurants and bars for the purposes of sidewalk patios. And further, that staff be directed to continue working on a permanent outdoor patio program to be presented to council in early 24 for consideration.
Thank you for reading that. The only question I have is does Thanksgiving ever fall past October 15th? No, I'm just thinking if it was November 1st, I would just hate for like halfway through the. Okay. So, sorry, and this will be going back to staff, or this is
No.
now going to form the final, this is the,
Because this policy was.
just your microphone, sorry.
Sorry, Mayor Coughlin, this policy was actually already, let's just say it's been rejuvenated.
Okay. Counselor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And yeah, just more of a comment. Again, I think adding on to what the deputy mayor's mentioned as well. We have a timeline around this, right? We're trying to get this going for this season so businesses can benefit from this opportunity. I know the BIA is also quite excited and has fully endorsed this this program as well. So I'm excited to see hopefully it come to fruition.
Great. Not seeing any more hands. All those in favor? And that has carried. So we'll go back to the main motion as amended, unless you want to read all that again. So we do have a mover and seconder for the main motion as amended. All those in favor? And that has carried. We are now moving on to item 8.4. May I have a mover and seconder to approve the report regarding the library unaudited year-end results for as of December 31st, 2022. A mover and seconder. I have Councillor Moore and Fisher that the report from the Director of Finance regarding the library unaudited year-end results as of December 31st, 2022, dated July 5th, 2023 be received, and that the 2022 remaining operating surplus of 40,484 be allocated as followed. A, 10,421 to the library capital discretionary reserve fund, and B, the remaining 30,000 be allocated 50% to the tax rate stabilization reserve and 50% to the recreation facility reserve. Council, are there any questions on this? Councillor Thompson.
Through the chair to Councillor Alexander, just a question. For the past 5 years, any surplus has been gone to the library capital discretionary reserve fund. And so this year we're proposing a change. So just a question to Councillor Alexander. How did you come up with this motion and why the change?
I'm not sure this was, I'm sorry, Councillor Alexander.
So I do think I did the motion. Sorry, I wasn't expecting the question. That's fine. My thought on it was, I was confused as to, I wanted to see the breakdown of where the funds came from as to why if they should all go back to the library reserve fund or if some of them should just go back to the general tax rate stabilization fund.
Following Councillor Thompson.
Just a follow up. This is through the chair to Director Radigan. So can you help me understand the purpose of the library capital discretionary reserve fund and whether that fund is actually needed at all?
Director Radigan.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Councillor Thompson. The original purpose of the Library Capital Reserve Fund is for specifically that, just the capital purchases as a result of the assets that we own that are specific to the library. So the idea is to ensure that we set those aside. I do understand from the facility condition assessment reports, there are items that do require upgrading in terms of all of the existing libraries. And I do believe council did approve those condition assessment reports. And as a result of the asset management plan, we are required to ensure we update those facilities. And so ideally they are township assets. So hence the township is required to ensure we maintain them. And so that fund is used for that purpose. It was created for that purpose.
Councillor Thompson.
So just follow on. So in your opinion, this fund is needed?
Director Radigan.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Councillor Thompson. From a financial perspective, it is recommended.
I'm going to give you one last follow on and then I'm going to go to Councillor Thompson or Councillor Fisher.
So just to follow on. So as you can see here, the breakdown of these funds, I mean, I think I am on the finance committee of the library and I think they've done a terrific job of, number one, staying within their budget over the years. I also think they've done a terrific job of generating funds. I mean, part of these funds are actually a bequest. So obviously people are pretty happy with our library. My proposal would be that these funds are going to be needed in the library and that the full amount of the $40,484 be allocated to the library capital discretionary reserve fund as they have been in the past 5 years, as these funds are going to be needed for our library in the future.
And before I do go to Councillor Fisher, when I guess it would be to CAO Schmidt, when we build the hub and the library, the intent is to have the library in that. Is the library paying for their full share of that, or is there going to be township offsetting? I mean, we haven't got down to breaking that all down, but the way I look at it, the tax rate stabilization reserve and the recreation facility reserve, the recreation facility reserve is going to serve some sort of purpose for the library. So to me, it's like if we put it in the library reserve or we put it in this reserve, this is where all that money is going anyway. So I'm just kind of curious. Yes, is the intent then the recreation facility reserve is the same as the hub where the library is going to be going? Director Radigan, sorry, how's that?
Thank you, Mayor Cogman, and through you to members of council. The majority, I believe 61% of the hub is to be funded through development charges. So that would include the library portion as well. And the remaining would be funded through a debenture, so that the carrying costs and the interest would be a tax levy increase to our residents. So whether we use tax rate stabilization funds or whether we use library reserve funds, at the end of the day, that is up to council and it is at their discretion. And ultimately, the goal of reserve funds or reserves is to ensure we can maintain the assets for the long term. When you initially create the asset, the idea with the hub, it is so large and the dollar value is so large, it would be entirely debentured, even the development charge portion of it.
Thank you. And I had Councillor Fisher.
I see where Councillor Thompson's going with this. I think it's important to realize there's 181,500 and change in that account right now. We've run surpluses for some time. It doesn't always go back into the reserve fund. As a matter of fact, in 16 and 17, we actually kept it out. You know, it's not necessarily to build it forever. And I think that if $30,000 of these dollars are taxpayers' dollars, it's important that at a certain point we keep them back. You know, $181,000, we should be able to assess what is enough, more than enough capital to do repairs. I've looked at the assessments of the properties, and keep in mind too, once we put the library into the hub, you know, that building will be no more, right? It will still maintain it, but we're moving the library. So I think it's not advantageous to keep building, to build this over 200,000 and then it becomes 250,000. Where does it stop building it with these surpluses? So we have to do what's right for the taxpayer and put that money somewhere else.
Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I just wanted to, my motion in no way was to say that the library capital discretionary reserve fund is not needed. I think it is needed. I think I wanted to see a clear breakdown of where that money comes from, because certain of the money absolutely comes from grants and fundraising, and that should absolutely be put back into the library. A good portion of that also comes just from the tax rate we put on to our residents. And if we have a surplus, that's great, but that also means we are essentially putting the tax rate a bit too high. So to me, that money should just go back into the general fund for everyone. So that again was the why we had the ask of breaking down.
Councillor Garwood and Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through yourself to Director Radigan. Looking at this from an outside perspective, again, that's how I like to try to look at things. When I'm a resident watching tonight, and I'm looking at A and B, and I'm looking at the library capital discretionary reserve fund, the tax rate stabilization reserve, and the recreation facility reserve, those are a lot of big words. Can you provide examples and understanding that most of those funds or reserves say it in the name, but where those funds would be utilized, and maybe, again, not specific exact examples, but just to, again, help any resident watching understand why we're up here discussing 30,000 in one account and 10,000 in another. Thank you.
Director Radigan.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you to Councillor Garwood. So the library discretionary reserve fund was specifically set up for only the use of for library capital. We cannot use it on anything else, specifically because it is a discretionary reserve fund. It also accumulates interest as a result of it being classified as a reserve fund. The tax rate stabilization reserve, as well as the recreation facility reserve, they have more of a broader, I guess, definition in terms of what you can use within those reserves. The interest that's accumulated from them actually goes back to reduce the tax levy, and the tax rate stabilization reserve would be used for in certain instances for one-offs or situations for let's say there was a tax appeal and it was a huge reduction in the tax levy. So in instances that are technically out of our control, but they would be one-offs. It's not something you would want to use on an ongoing basis. The recreation facility reserve is similar to, I'd say, the tax rate reserve, except you would not be spending it on one-offs. It was set up specific for the recreation facilities. It could be used for equipment. It could be used for infrastructure, furniture, the new hub studies, et cetera, et cetera. But the library discretionary reserve fund can only be used for library capital.
I have Fisher and then Thompson.
So just through to Director Radigan, so just a quick recap. When it is in the library capital discretionary reserve fund, the incurred interest or the interest payout stays within that fund. However, if we were to put it into the tax rate stabilization reserve or the recreation facility reserve, that would effectively reduce the tax levy, the interest. Right. Yeah. So sorry.
Director
So it'd be-
Radigan, I'm sorry.
Sorry, so it would be more advantageous then for the taxpayer that $30,063 go into a fund that would benefit them, their taxation. And
Director Radigan.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Councillor Fisher. That is a small amount. The overall impact would be very minimal.
I did say Thompson and then Garwood.
Through the chair to Director Radigan, just really quickly, from your experience, is the library capital discretionary reserve fund overfunded now? And do you see a future need for these monies?
Director Radigan.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you to Councillor Thompson. I think what was identified through the asset management plan is that we are not technically spending enough on our assets. And we do need to ensure we have enough funds set aside to maintain our aging infrastructure and maintain any new infrastructure we do put in place. So to me, whatever we do put aside in reserve funds, it's never too much. You need to ensure we can maintain those assets for the long term and that we can be sustainable. Thank you.
Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself, through to Director Radigan. And just for clarification, that $10,421, again, that's investment income, facility rental income, program contributions, donations, fundraising, and book donation drive. None of those dollars were taxed to the taxpayer initially. I'm seeing a nod. So then building off on that, while I completely agree with what Councillor Fisher said in regards to we shouldn't, if we're taxing somebody something, we absolutely shouldn't just dump it in an account. But if these dollars weren't taxed initially, yes, they would benefit the tax base, but also those monies were donated, contributed, fundraised, etc., for the specific purpose of going towards the library. So I see the $10,000 fitting into the library capital discretionary reserve fund, seeing as it was initially not taxed to the tax base. Thank you.
All right. I have this before us and I mean, we can continue. Okay, so I have Councillor Alexander, sorry, and then Fisher and then Thompson. No? I thought your hand went up. No, my apologies. Fisher and then Thompson.
Just to clarify with Mr. Garwood, that's exactly what it is. The $10,421 was not taxed money, right? The $30,063 is from the taxpayer. Okay, so just to clarify that, yeah. Okay, perfect.
Councillor Thompson.
So my amendment would be that, how do I do this? My amendment would be that the entire amount of the $40,484 be allocated to the library fund because of the future needs, and that this money will be needed, and it will be needed in the library fund in the future.
I would just need a seconder for the amendment. And I don't see a seconder. So we are back to the main motion, that the report from the Director of Finance regarding the library unaudited year-end results as December 31st, 2022, dated July 5th, 2023, be received And that the 2022 remaining operating surplus of 40,484 be allocated as follows. A, 10,421 to the library capital discretionary reserve fund, and B, the remaining $30,063 be allocated 50% to the tax rate stabilization reserve and 50% to the recreation facility reserve. All those in favor? Oh, and we're having all those, I can do it after, it's fine.
I would just like to request a recorded vote.
And, yeah, which we can do that after. All those in favor? That has carried. And we have a requested vote.
Thank you. So it is on the main motion, as originally listed on the agenda. When I state your name, please state yes or no. Counselor Garwood,
Yes.
Counselor Alexander,
Yes.
Counselor Thompson,
No.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Cabral,
Yes.
and Mayor Coggan.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
All right. And now we are moving on to we're now moving on to item 9, our information reports. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the information reports? Councilors Moore and Deputy Cabral, that the reports listed herein be received for information. ZB 2023-011 2266 South Orr Lake Road. 2, Q1 2023 procurement summary. And 3, the Sant Road traffic calming request. Are there any comments on this? And seeing none, Counselor Fisher?
All right, just read out my motion, that the motion now before council be amended as follows, and that council hereby directs staff to commence the consultation process for the installation of speed bumps on Sant Road as outlined within the traffic calming policy, and further that the consultation results be presented to council for further consideration.
Thank you, Counselor Fisher. So I'm assuming you would like to pull number 3.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
A little
we would like
backwards.
to pull number 3, and we have a mover and seconder for items 1 and 2, and we will go back to item 3. All those in favor for 1 and 2, and that has carried, and we will move now on to item 3 as amended, and it's already been the amendment for the main motion, but I don't have that. Yeah. So may I have a mover and seconder for a report Sant Road traffic calming request? I have Counselor Fisher and Counselor Moore. That is now on the table. We have heard the amendment and we need a seconder for the amendment. And I have Counselor Garwood for the amendment, and can I ask a question at this point? Or do I have to vote? I can ask. So the process, and I guess as we threw you to GM Ramdeo, the process that was just outlined in the amendment by Counselor Fisher, is that in line with our traffic calming initiative policy?
Yes, Mayor Coughlin, it would be in accordance with the traffic calming policy.
Fantastic. Are there any other questions on the amendment, or sorry, Counselor Fisher?
Just through to GM Ramdeo, could you maybe just explain to council and the public that's watching what the consultation process would be like in the area?
GM Ramdeo?
Through your Mayor Coughlin to Councillor Fisher, the consultation process would actually begin with coming up with a draft design of a speed bump, speed hump, and then reaching out to first emergency services, so fire, police, likewise, get their comments, get past their comments in terms of what is it they would like to see, changes, modifications. Once that is complete, then we begin a process with the community, which will begin with a survey of the community that they are in support of this. Once that is, we cross that hurdle, the next point is to have a public meeting with the community to present the alternative and installation and implementation process. Assuming everybody is in line with that, that according to the traffic calming process or policy, we return to council with the results accordingly.
Thank you, GM Ramdeo. And years ago on council, there was a lot of discussion about speed bumps, and we put speed bumps in and then we took speed bumps out, and we in the same area. And through the traffic calming initiative, we had talked about moving towards the vertical pylons. Is there a reason why it's speed bumps specific, or if it's just any traffic calming measure, or if it's specific to speed bump?
Mayor Coughlin, just a point of clarification in terms of this particular report. The specific request for this report was the consideration of speed bumps. And that's why it was written the way it was written.
And through you to Councillor Fisher, so it's specific to speed bumps that you're looking for, or you're looking for mitigation of any type?
Sorry, I think it was specific to speed bumps for that particular street, the S bend in it. We were thinking that would be the most advantageous to it. There is a reduced speed sign right now, right? It hasn't yielded really any results. So did you have something else in mind?
Sorry, and no, and if I can, it's just with going with my concern with going with one type of mitigation is that if we find that one's not, if it's specific to speed bumps, then do we have to come back and start all over again? Or can we just, if it's, I don't remember what those were called, the vertical GM Ramdeo?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Could I call it the flippy things?
That's what I call them but not in public. So yes, I call them the flippy things because they seem to be what other municipalities are using, because the speed bumps are typically expensive. They are wear on the snow plows and these ones. So I just was curious as to why, if our traffic calming policy states to go out, assess, and then determine which of the mitigations would be best. I just wasn't sure if speed bumps was identified or if it was a request. So thank you for the clarification. So we have the amendment before us. All those in favor? And that has carried. And now at the main motion as amended. No, we'll vote on the main motion as amended. All those in favor? And that has carried. You're just laughing, so I was just curious. Oh. We have verbal reports. First, we have the high school district school agreement update from Manager Dean. Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me? Perfect. Good evening, Mayor Coughlin and members of council. So to provide an update for this evening, staff have been working with Simcoe County District School Board. Their board did meet in June to discuss an amended agreement with the township in terms of the school board helping to coordinate and facilitate bookings at Elmville District High School to allow community access while giving the township first right of refusal for bookings for midweek bookings. The Simcoe County District School Board's board of directors meets again at the end of August, and staff have been working with their staff head to have the amended agreement presented to the board of directors at the end of August that would then be able to come back to council for an updated agreement. In the interim, staff have been working with the school board to have access to the school over the summer for 2 nights a week over the summer, which would have the township staff opening and closing the building and be able to run drop-in style programs at the school. So staff do have a posting out for positions to be able to fulfill these roles. At this time, we are still working through interviews for the positions and do not currently have that position filled.
Any questions for Manager Dean? Being none, we can move on. Oh, sorry. Oh, Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Manager Dean. Is there any possibilities, because this has been ongoing for quite some time and we are only looking at, I believe we said 2 days a week. Sorry, you were a bit hard to hear, or 2 nights a week, like a small pilot program to start in the summer. Is there not the ability to have use of any current staff help out with that, kind of be redeployed so we can get this pilot program, if you will, back up and running?
Manager Dean.
Thank you, Mayor Colvin, through yourself to Councillor Alexander. Unfortunately, with the summer grass cutting and outdoor duties for staffing, as well as summer students leaving, unfortunately, in approximately a month back to school, and then the arena becoming operational, we do not currently have the staffing levels to redeploy staff.
Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. That's frustrating. I guess where I'm going with this now is there a possibility, and again, not wanting to get into operations and overstepping here, because again, I'm also learning throughout this process, but is there any discussion or possibility that this can be, again, I don't want to say taken away and brought back, because then we're in August. And while I completely respect the fact that staffing is tight and there's a posting out there right now, we told residents that we were making this a priority, and residents are expecting results.
I have Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm just going to throw a suggestion out there. If we're that strapped for staff that we can accommodate 2 nights a week, I would suggest that we look to contracting, maybe cutting the grass at a couple of our fields for the short term, so that we can then deploy our own people to the high school. That might be a viable option until we do have someone in place. I would suggest that might be something that we could look at. Pick a couple of spots to take a couple of days a week and redeploy those 2 individuals or that individual to the school for 2 nights. I'm just throwing it out there. If any other members of council have ideas, thinking outside the box, maybe that might be something we can do to get the folks back in school.
I'm going to go to Councillor Garwood and then to CEO Schmidt for a comment.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through yourself, through to Manager Dean. And I'm not sure if I can ask this question, so I'm going to ask it and I will be told if I can or not. With a posting currently out there, has there not yet been somebody hired, or has there been a challenge with recruitment? Can I ask that?
Manager Dean.
Unfortunately, there has been a challenge with recruitment in terms of candidates accepting the interview.
If you can repeat that for us, or you're cutting in and out.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Now I can.
Unfortunately, so the posting has received resumes. Unfortunately, we have not had candidates accepting the interviews.
I'm going to go to CEO Schmidt for comment.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So through you to members of council, as Manager Dean mentioned, staff are trying to get this up and running as best we can. Understanding things have changed over the last couple of years with COVID, and the individuals that we had originally hired to take on these positions have been redeployed and have taken on full-time positions with the township, as others have left the township since that time. And, again, we are out there, we're trying to recruitment for these types of positions is not easy. To be quite honest with you, some of our summer students, had they not been returning to the township, we likely would have had even less students. And we're not the only ones in this position. There's many municipalities across Ontario that are in the same position where recruitment's difficult right now. For whatever reason, I don't have the answer. Some people just don't want to work. And so it is difficult. That said, again, if I think staff is trying to work within the means that council's given us with regards to budget. We are trying to get out there. Like I said, we're trying to recruit. As Deputy Mayor mentioned, if that's something that council wishes to direct staff to do, to essentially, or is on board with staff looking at contracting, it is something we can explore. I will remind you, we do have some other limitations within the township, if you may. So we do have to be mindful of that. So again, it's not that staff are not trying to get this up and running. We understand it's a priority. We do. We're just we have some challenges here with trying to get some individuals there that can actually assist us with opening this facility.
I had Alexander and then Cabral, please. Right, no, Garwood, I'm looking.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Adding on to what the deputy mayor said, and what CAO Schmidt said, I think that's the direction that we're going to have to go. While I wish the news was different, this is the situation we're in. And again, understanding that staff are doing all that they can right now. So if that's the direction that we need to provide forward, we need to get moving on this. So if that's the case, I won't necessarily be the person to put forward the language. I know the deputy mayor did, and maybe I'll defer to him.
Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Once again, thinking outside the box here a little bit. We're talking about Parks and Recreation and their services being allocated to grass cutting at the present time. I would wonder if it would be possible. August is usually a fairly dry month, but I'm wondering if it might be possible to identify those parks that are not necessarily being utilized to the full extent. I can think of a few myself, neighborhood parks that really aren't being utilized. Off of Gallagher there's one. I don't know how often we cut the grass there, but is there opportunity to, on some of those parks, maybe instead of cutting them as frequently as we do now, to make it just a wee bit longer in the short term so that we might be in a position to at least open up the school? I mean, it's a matter of prioritizing. We've put $250,000 of not taxpayer money, $250,000 of resident money in there through fundraising. Township's paying for it every year as well. That versus cutting grass. I know during the pandemic, grass was let go a little bit. I'm wondering if folks in Elmvale knew that we could utilize the school if we didn't cut grass quite as often, just for those 2 nights. Because we're not talking about an 8-hour period of time. I don't believe we are, but at least we could get back in there. People could get accustomed to it. I mean, basically, if I was to put forward a motion right now regarding this, one of them would be to explore contracting, but I'll be honest with you, how quickly could that even happen? Second one is to look at how frequently we're utilizing our Parks and Rec staff to actually maintain the parks and see whether or not there's opportunity maybe to cut back a little bit here, cut back a little bit there to make 2 nights a week available. Or even as an option, tell park staff there's an overtime opportunity for you here in the short term. Because I'd rather use that and pay a little bit more than not utilize it at all and have residents turning around saying, well, thanks for nothing, folks. You know, and it's no reflection on staff. I understand you have your restraints, but I'm just wondering, is there an opportunity for us to be able to do something like that through one mechanism or the other? I think if you said there's an overtime opportunity through the week, you're not asking to work Saturdays and Sundays. Through the week, a few hours in the evening, we might get some takers for that. So I don't know whether that would have to be a motion or we could just motion to direct staff to explore those opportunities. Is that possible? Because I'm happy to make it.
You can make any motion that you want to make, obviously. No, my concern with the offering the overtime, or I don't want it to look as this council is trying to impede on any union negotiations or however that works. If we just provide overall direction that says, get the doors open, and what cost are we going to be able to incur to do? Like, I think that the message is there, and you can see that staff are trying to do it, but we're trying to, like, we only have one more meeting in between now and the school's operation is back to school. So how do what type of direction would you require from this council to get the doors open? And CAO Schmidt?
No, thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I think based on the discussion this evening, staff have direction, if you will. You know, to the deputy mayor's comment about grass cutting, that is a level of service. So again, if you want to change the level of service, that's what council dictates. So that is an option, but I think we hear you, and also I think you maybe hear us as well, as we're trying to do what we can, and hopefully based on this discussion tonight, we can look at some of these other options and try to explore them as best we can, and hopefully report back to you probably through an email as to where we are in the next next week or so.
And I think that if if we do need to have a special meeting of council, we can do a virtual, whichever we need to do to get it done. Like, we're willing to work with staff on any level as well. I had Cabral and then back over to Garwood.
Just a quick follow on that. I think too, that if we're in there during the summertime for a couple of nights, and I'm looking at staff because I'm counting on you guys to pull the rabbit out of the hat. But it puts us in a really, really good space and framework that when school starts, we've already established some type of a presence in the school again. And I think that's pretty important, because once school starts up again, I don't feel that we're going to be on their radar for that. So now's our time to push to get back in there and see what we can do so that when September rolls around, we're already in the school again. So that's my final comment though, but thank you.
Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And just my final comments. I understand the conversation tonight hasn't been around specifically the financials around this discussion, but again, just referencing back to numbers that Director Radigan had provided me months ago, there is $242,215.44 sitting in a bank account specifically fundraised by the community for this project. While again, I understand that's not the premise of tonight's discussion. The community is going to ask, well, why aren't those funds being utilized for this? So just throwing it out there. I understand staff is aware and I understand council is aware, but wanting to make that noted as well that, well, it's not a discussion about the lack of funds. Those funds do exist. And in my mind, I would like to see them go towards us reopening.
Seeing no more hands, we can move on to our development updates with GM Ramdeo.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to all of council. This evening, I'll touch on three areas, beginning with the mixed subdivision. Phase one, the home construction does continue and home closings. More residents are moving into the community. Within that community, the developer is also working on some landscaping, as well as finishing up the parks and some trees around the stormwater pond. So works continue in that area. Across at phase two, which is coming in later, possibly next year, they continue working on the internal servicing. So this is the roads, the water main, the sewers, the electrical, the gas, likewise. Continue working on those. And I think they're on the road phase right now, finishing off the road phase. Moving towards an eventual pulling of building permits. Don't have the exact time, but likely later this year, next year, on that phase. Related to the mixed subdivision as well, there is the paving of Carson Road from Ann Street over to Wilson to the limits of the county's work. That is scheduled to begin the week of July 24th. It'll probably take a couple of days, likely up to a week. So by the first week of August, that ought to be complete. The paving will be for 2 lanes along that stretch. Next year, in conjunction with the phase 2 works, the developer will return to build the turning lanes into their phase 2 subdivision. And that will be in conjunction with the closing of those homes. So likely sometime later, like next year, possibly the latter part of next year. Moving on to Wilson Road, the closure on Seaton and Carson to facilitate the roundabout construction. That will be a 1-month closure beginning almost immediately after the construction on Carson Road. So August 1st to the end of August. So Carson, both Carson towards Wilson, Seaton towards Wilson will be closed to access to facilitate that construction. Moving across Bayfield to Midhurst Heights with council's approval of item 8.8 this evening, the stage 2 agreement, that developer will start moving towards construction. In conversations with them, they have indicated that they are actually thinking of moving as early as next week to begin construction on the internal servicing works. Those internal servicing works will likely take the better part of a year. So possibly to around September next year. And that brings me to the end of this evening's update.
And moving on to municipal updates, does anyone have any municipal updates? I have Councillor Garwood. Well, we'll go this way. Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just a few updates tonight. As always, the Springwater Farmers Market Elmvale is in operation, a couple weeks in. I'm happy to say last week when I was at the market with my family, I saw the most vendors and the most people I've ever seen walk through that market personally. I'm not saying it is, but I'm just saying myself. So I'm quite excited about that. And I know speaking with a lot of the vendors they are, and it's only projected to grow. We have other vendors that have signed on that'll be joining the market later on this summer. This past Monday, the Elmvale Community Recreation Association hosted our very first event, which was quite exciting. We've come a long way in our short 6 months that the committee has been formed. We raised over $1,300 with the event that we ran. It was a scavenger hunt throughout the community where families could come on out on the long weekend, purchase kits and walk around the community, learn a bit about the village of Elmvale. A lot of the local businesses supported, donated different items for those kits. So again, I wanted to thank the community and our incredible 12 to 15 volunteers that worked really hard to make it happen. So we have something to work with now. And the last item I wanted to mention is the Homer Barrett Park Playground project. The project was delayed due to delays with the contractor. The project is expected to commence any day now, and once it does commence, will take roughly 1 week to complete. Thank you.
Counselor Alexander?
The Phelpston CRA had their annual Canada Day fireworks on Canada Day. Yet again, I will say a huge success. I'm continually impressed on the fireworks show we put on, which this council did help put some more money towards, which was great. But in the majority of the fireworks are donated by everybody who comes to participate in the event. So always a great show, and a huge thank you to all the volunteers who, we're not going to say risked their lives, but went out there, set the fireworks off, and everyone came back with all their limbs. So great job.
Counselor Thompson?
Fresh off their national award, the Springwater Library's summer reading program is off to a great start. We've added extra program sessions to Elmvale and Midhurst as our programs for this week filled up quickly, and then the additional programs are also waitlisted. We'll be adding additional programs throughout the summer to meet demand. Over 200 children have registered for our summer reading program, and registration is still taking place. There are themed programs each week. The reading log is through our Read Squared app, and it's a lot of fun for our youth. Big thanks to the staff and the Springwater Library for the great work that they're doing with our youth. Thank you.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm just going to take. Yeah. If I could take the opportunity to ask General Manager Ramdeo now, because I'm getting questions. If you could provide a status on the Grenfell Hall updates, please, or renovation, plus the shed in the Stone Manor Park. I'm getting questions for that too.
GM Ramdeo?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Councillor Moore. Could I, if Manager Dean is still on, could I ask her to give us an update on those two, please?
Manager Dean.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself to Councillor Moore. Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. I tried to fiddle with a few things, so maybe it's better. So the final quotes are going out for both of those projects to work on securing the contractors and final works for the projects. Some of the residents that have been working in conjunction with staff on the park project have asked to meet with staff again, just to look at some of the final locations for that. So I will be planning to meet with them based on their schedules in the upcoming days, and just really go over these sites and locations we had spoke of for the shed project at Stone Manor Phase 1.
And if we could ask that if you could email that after you're done to the rest of council, that would be great. And actually, Manager Dean, if I can just ask for you just to stay camera on for a second. I believe that Deputy Cabral. Oh, sorry, we were just. Go ahead.
Thank you, Manager Dean. Just to add that I did receive the same email that you did. And if we could coordinate a joint meeting, that would be great. So we'll do that through email too.
And Councillor Fisher? No. All right, we will go back to, and I do believe is Planner Belcourt online or just in the building? Either one, none. We will just go to Deputy Cabral here. Sorry, Manager Dean, just hold on there.
Hold on. Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. You might like to make comment as well, but back on June the 22nd, they held the Springwater Swing Golf Tournament at Springwater Golf Course. I can tell you the day was outstanding. The staff there were great. And we had a wonderful meal. It was a sold out event. I was there. Councillor Alexander was there. Councillor Fisher was there.
We're all there.
Were we all there?
Yes.
Okay, we were all there. Some for golf and some for dinner. But it was a fabulous day, and I really have to commend staff because ultimately it was staff that pulled this all together. And although the spokesperson was Mayor Coughlin, she did a fantastic job both outside at the start and then again inside, thanking everybody for their attendance and thanking everybody for participating. But staff did an outstanding job of pulling it all together. They had a registration table that was set up. There was a number of small little bottles that you had to figure out how many were in the containers. I thought we were supposed to take a couple, but apparently we weren't. But it was a wonderful day. The staff at the golf course itself were quite nice, but the meal was good. The barbecue was nice. Best burger I've had probably in a month or so, to be honest with you. It was very, very tasty. And of course, there's not much else I can say, but certainly to Manager Dean and Shelley, everybody was involved. Ms. Belcourt, Brianna Belcourt, the whole crew, Nicole Audette, who took pictures. I think I turn it over to Mayor Coughlin. She knew more of the staff that were on scene. I was too busy driving around and playing golf.
No, and you actually did capture. There was I would say the four friends, but Manager Dean, thank you very much for everything that you did for us and for the funds that you've brought to our community. We look forward to this, and we are on rotation for Vespra for next year. Is that what we said? For Vespra next year. So we look forward to what you guys are going to come up with, and hopefully we do have that aerial in time for that fundraiser. So thank you very much for everything. And at this time, we can move on to our notices of motion. I have a notice of motion regarding tarps on the outdoor rink for the Snow Valley Highlands Park, moved by Councillor Moore and seconded by Councillor Fisher. And I will move to Councillor Moore to read her notice of motion.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. This will be the second or third year. I can't exactly recall that I brought this motion forward. I thought this year possibly I would be using the discretionary funds policy, or potentially looking at the budget for a permanent position. But through CAO Schmidt, he recommended that with the outdoor rink policy coming forward shortly, that it would be best to maybe ask for the tax rate stabilization reserve again to pay for this. So whereas the township recognizes the time and effort of volunteers at the Snow Valley Highlands Park outdoor rinks, whereas the volunteers have fundraised $1,800 for the rink tarps used for the 2 outdoor rinks, and whereas the volunteers request a donation from the township for the remaining costs of the tarps in the amount of $2,300 from the tax rate stabilization reserve.
Yeah, Council, is there any comments on the notice of motion? Seeing no comment, all those in favor? And that has carried. Are there any items are there any notices of motion? Items for future consideration? May I have a mover and seconder for the approval of the bylaws, please? Oh, hang on. Thank you, Clerk Ainsworth. Can I pass the chair to you, or do you want this?
Oh, yes, I want.
So at this time, we would need to waive our procedural bylaw. Council, earlier today, we had a paper on desk, which is a time-sensitive comment through our North Simcoe mayors, and I will turn, if I first have to have the procedural bylaw waived. A mover and seconder, so I would ask for Deputy Cabral and Councillor Moore that we waive the procedural bylaw. All those in favor? And that has carried, and we will move back to Deputy Cabral for a notice of motion.
And there, a notice of motion with respect to us supporting a letter. There was a meeting earlier this week that Mayor Coughlin and myself attended along with CAO Schmidt. And one of the topics that came up for discussion was the aggregate resources branch. In particular, we were discussing the water from the Waverly Uplands at the time. And there was a letter that was going to be sent with respect to the review that they're doing, but the comments on proposed changes closes on July the 13th. And as we know, we won't be meeting again until August. So the letter that you have before you is a draft copy that basically, in a nutshell, we're asking for council's support in providing our endorsement and as being a signatory to the letter, along with Penetanguishene, Midland, Tiny, Tay. Is that it? Who are part of the North Simcoe Heads of Council. So that's what this letter is about, and we're trying to get it in there so that it can be compiled along with all the other comments that are being made. This was drafted by the mayor from Tiny, Doug. Dave Evans, sorry. That's why he doesn't answer me when I call him Doug. So I apologize, Dave. So I'm looking for your support so that we can add our name to this and forward it to the appropriate people so that it can be considered.
Thank you. Okay. And we need a seconder, Councillor Moore, on that. She got 2 hands for that one. And Councillor Moore has noted that I will email Mayor Evans after and ask them to include guests in that. I'm sure they'll be amendable. It's still on draft form. So thank you for that. All those in favor? And that has carried. Do I need to? May I have a mover and seconder for the approval of the bylaws, please? I have Councillors Alexander and Deputy Cabral that the bylaws listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. 2023-073 to establish the public highway Part 1 Floss Road 4 East, 2023-074 appointment of the Integrity Commissioner, 2023-075 official plan adoption, and 5000-373 ZB 2023-010 1010 Beaver Lane. Are there any questions on this motion? And seeing none, all those in favor? And that is carried. Director Spagnol, is this where I get to say congratulations now? Not yet? Oh, confirmation bylaw. May I have a mover and seconder for the confirmation bylaw? Councillors Moore and Fisher, that bylaw 2023-076 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council in the regular meeting held on July 5th, 2023, listed herein, be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? And for adjournment, that the regular meeting, or sorry, a mover and seconder for adjournment, Cabral and Thompson, that the regular meeting of the township does now adjourn at 8:32 p.m. to meet again in regular session on August 2nd, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you, everyone.